Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Sarah Wong. Our top stories tonight. Hong Kong's Omicron cases rise to 14, with one person visiting restaurants before testing positive. Police are on alert as officials put the final touches to the Legislative Council elections tomorrow. And the strongest typhoon to hit the Philippines this year kills more than 30 people. A Cathay Pacific cargo pilot has become Hong Kong's first Omicron case who went out into the community. 2 other people were also infected, taking the city's Omicron tally to 14. Wong has the latest.
It's official. Omicron has made its way into the community. Local health authorities confirmed today 3 more cases of the highly mutated variant. One of them is a 36-year-old Cathay Pacific cargo pilot who triggered a lockdown on Thursday in the Yau Ma Tei building where he lives after he was diagnosed with COVID. After returning from a flight to the United States, he tested negative at the airport on Monday. Since he belongs to a group exempted from normal quarantine measures, he was allowed to go home until he showed a positive result in a routine checkup on his 3rd day back in Hong Kong. In between the checks, he had gone out and visited restaurants. Authorities are now keeping tabs on around 20 close contacts and have sent them to quarantine centers, although none returned a positive result yet. Authorities also did not find any cases in his building.
Omicron 嘅變種病毒株傳染嘅威力係異常嘅高嘅。
However, infectious disease expert Joseph Zhang told iCable News that early studies showed Omicron to be highly infectious. The pilot's neighbors and people who went to the eateries he visited should isolate themselves. The other 2 Omicron patients had tested positive at the airport. Hong Kong's total Omicron tally now stands at 14. The city also reported 5 imported cases today. 1 tested positive at the airport, while the rest were discovered with COVID while in quarantine. 3 had 2 BioNTech jabs, while a 77-year-old woman from England and an 83-year-old man who flew in from Canada even had booster shots. Wong, HKIBC.
Many parts of the world are struggling to deal with fast-spreading COVID variants, which are driving up caseloads. The United States is grappling with a worsening Delta surge, while Britain's healthcare system is being severely tested by Omicron. Britain is enduring a grim winter as a COVID tsunami overwhelms hospitals and dampens festivities. New cases hit a record for the 3rd straight day, registering over 93,000 infections in the past 24 hours. More than 3,200 of the new patients had Omicron, taking Britain's tally of the highly contagious variant to almost 15,000.
Initially, it was all hands on deck. Everyone was full of energy. But as the time's gone on, it seems like there's no ending to it.
With the situation worsening, Britain scrambled for trains to France while they still could. Paris has banned travelers from across the channel, except French nationals, residents and essential service workers, such as lorry drivers. Travel firms have grumbled about the fresh restrictions, but France is determined to stop Omicron. Prime Minister Jean Castex warned that the variant will become dominant in France by early next year. Omicron, coupled with the Delta variant, is bringing the United States to its knees in the battle against COVID. New York City saw its biggest one-day surge as 21,000 new cases sent officials racing to shore up testing and healthcare capacity. The United States recorded a daily average of 122,000 cases in the past week, forcing the cancellation of sports events and holiday musicals. While experts say there's no evidence that Omicron is less severe than Delta, it is spreading 5 times faster. COVID has infected more than 270 million people worldwide and killed over 5 million in the past 2 years. U.S. pharmaceutical giant Pfizer predicts COVID will become an endemic disease in 2024, meaning the world will have to cope with the virus in the long run. Locally again, the ICAC has issued arrest warrants for 5 people in self-exile, including former lawmaker Nathan Law. The others are Sunny Cheng, Timothy Lee, Lee Ka-wai, and Carmen Lau. All are wanted for encouraging others to cast blank or invalid ballots in tomorrow's Legislative Council elections. Law is accused of using an online conference to call on Hong Kongers to make a stand. The Res allegedly did the same during a social media broadcast. Cheng is also accused of posting messages on social media telling people not to vote. Police have arrested a man in Taiwan for allegedly inciting others to disrupt the polls. He is accused of urging people during an online forum to make lone wolf-style attacks on police officers and poll station staff. The 35-year-old is also accused of encouraging others to destroy venues with violence. The force claims he has been posting similar messages since 2019. A phone and a computer were seized during the arrest. Final preparations are underway for the LegCo polls tomorrow. Officials are making last-ditch efforts to drum up voter turnout in the city's first major election since the national security law and the electoral revamp. Wong has more.
Police have been on high alert in preparation for tomorrow's elections, the first major one since the national security law was enacted in June last year. There was a heavy security presence across polling stations last night, some officers with guns and police dogs in tow. Police Chief Raymond Siu had said last month that streets will be flooded with over 10,000 officers on Election Day to ensure everything goes smoothly. Officials are also making some final preparations. Taking to the airwaves this morning, Electoral Affairs Commission Chairman Barnabas Fung said there will be many changes to voting procedures this year, which hopefully will make the process faster and more efficient. All polling stations, apart from 30 in more remote areas, will make use of the electronic voter register. He also said the aim is to have all results out by noon on Monday. According to Fung, the commission has so far received about 600 complaints, mostly against election advertising, although he stopped short of going into details. Also on radio today was Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Eric Tsang, who said he has noticed some calls for people to boycott the elections or to cast blank votes. He accused persistent anti-China individuals of trying to discredit the city's electoral system. Tsang said these conspiracies and tricks will never succeed. And Chief Secretary John Lee called on people to vote, adding that he's eagerly anticipating the birth of a new legislative council. He also urged Hong Kongers not to let foreign agents and destructive forces succeed. Under the electoral reforms to ensure that patriots run Hong Kong, 153 candidates are vying for 90 seats in an enlarged legislature, which will include 40 members in the new election committee constituency. Only 20 lawmakers will be directly elected, compared with 35 in the last legislature. Wong, HKIBC.
People in Taiwan have voted in 4 referendums as the opposition Kuomintang increased pressure on President Tsai Ing-wen. Tsai cast her ballot in New Taipei City. One of the most contentious topics is whether to renew a ban on U.S. pork containing an animal additive. Tsai lifted the ban earlier when she sought warmer ties with Washington to counter Beijing's tougher stance towards the island. The Beijing-friendly Kuomintang, which wants the U.S. pork ban restored, also urged voters to support restarting a nuclear plant. The strongest typhoon to batter the Philippines this year has left at least 33 people dead in its wake. The island of Siargao, where Super Typhoon Rai made landfall on Thursday, resembled a war zone. Virtually no house escaped the storm's fury. Communications with the island are still down. Up to 300,000 people were evacuated. In the central island of Bohol, Coast Guard personnel went searching for survivors as officials tried to supply food and clean water. The typhoon is heading towards Vietnam, but is expected to veer north and come closest to Hong Kong on Tuesday as a tropical depression. Russia has given a list of demands to the United States and its European allies to de-escalate tensions over Ukraine. This came as U.S. intelligence assessments show Moscow continuing a troop buildup at its border with Ukraine. Fears of a war along Russia's southern border have risen amid reports that Moscow has continued to mass troops on Ukraine's doorstep, despite international pleas to pull back. U.S. intelligence said over 50 battalion tactical groups with 900 personnel each were deployed, using commercial air and rail systems. Analysts believe Russia's military buildup this time is unusual because of the less visible concentration and the mobilization of National Guard units. Russian President Vladimir Putin has denied planning to invade Ukraine, but has so far refused to heed Western calls to withdraw his troops. With the situation in a stalemate, Moscow handed the United States and its allies a list of demands to defuse tensions in the region. They include no more eastwards expansion of the U.S.-led military alliance NATO or military activities in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. Russia also wants U.S. nuclear weapons removed from Europe and NATO troops pulled out of Poland and the Baltic states. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov urged the West to meet Moscow halfway in rebuilding relations. Washington is considering the proposals while NATO and Ukraine stood firm on their security autonomy. Analysts speculate that Russia might aim to distract the West with unrealistic demands while keeping pressure on Ukraine. The crisis also came ahead of the 30th anniversary of the Soviet Union's collapse, which Putin lamented as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe in the 20th century. 2 teenagers in New York are in stable condition in hospital after sliding down a pipe to escape a fire in their high-rise building. A video shot by a witness showed the pair clambering out of a window on the 5th floor. After some moments of hesitation, an 18-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy climbed down the exterior pipe. They are being treated for smoke inhalation and burns. A man was found dead in the flat that caught fire, while a woman was badly injured. On to the weather now. It will be cool tomorrow morning and mainly fine during the day. Temperatures range between 15 and 19 degrees. Keep your umbrella handy early next week in case of rain. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for this Saturday night. We'll be back at 10 tonight with more updates. I'm Sarah Wong. Thanks for joining us and take care.